Oh, wow. Marcus Black. I am so excited to have you on. I saw you the other day on Facebook and I'm like, wait, I got to grab him quick because I have had you on my list to be on the show. I got to know you through, a platform and listen to you. It was incredible. I mean, every time you get on, every time I hear you speak, I'm just like, yes, say it. You have so much to say and you're an incredible storyteller. So today I want to hear a story. All right. I want to hear all about you. So for our listeners and our viewers, why don't you just give a quick introduction of who you are and we're going to get started.
Well, hello, my friend. It's so good to see your face. I'm so glad to be here with you in this incredible community of people who gather and assemble on a regular basis. If you guys are not used to me or you've never met me before, I am a ball of energy always, and I'm excited to be joining you today. So my name is Marcus Black, also known as M Black Speaks. And I speak with a lot of urgency. I speak with a lot of passion, and people are always like, have you always been that way? Absolutely not is the answer to that question. My life story starts in Mississippi. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, raised in Mississippi, and come from humble beginnings, man. People always talk about being raised in the mud, which is a slang terminology for like humble beginnings. But no, I came from the literal mud in Mississippi, and my family worked hard to take care of us, and that's not lost upon me. But we also had a lot of struggles. There was alcoholism in my house. There was abuse in my house, chaos. And I started struggling with crippling anxiety, like deathly crippling anxiety at age 9. And this was a perpetual nightmare that would haunt me throughout the years and years and years. So here I am in all this chaos, all this turmoil, literally abuse happening all around me, and anxiety haunting my sleep as a small child for years and years and years before, boom, something happened. And that was the beginning of creating the person that most people know me for today. That was a dance. I had a dance with death. And so that was my wake up call.
So before we go into all that, there's a lot of relatable things here. I like come from the mud or grew up in the mud because I always say I'm a child of trauma. Same thing, like alcoholism in the family, had a lot of anxiety. Something interesting that you just reminded me of is I started to develop severe migraines and on a daily basis for years, I started to have severe migraines. I would go home from school and I would throw up. And then I would have to lay down and it would take me out for the whole day. And I was like 9 or 10. So I started to develop some severe anxiety for a couple of years. And I totally forgot about it until you just brought it up. But it used to plague me so bad. I was like missing a ton of school from it. And it was really concerning. So I definitely can relate to some of that story. Humble beginnings, absolutely. But that creates some of the best people, people like you. Okay, so I am looking at your bio. Okay. And we're going to hit your story, but I mean, incredible. I mean, you have a podcast yourself. We'll talk about that towards the end because we definitely want to highlight you. Top 10 keynote speaker. Absolutely love that. You're an incredible speaker. We already know. You don't even have to say that to anyone already, but former pastor. So you got into that. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about life. Child of trauma. Let's go. What happened to get you into this propelling motion this way? Because you could have went the other way. You totally could have.
Absolutely. So it was the dance with death that was a crossroads in my life. And that was a near-death experience that happened in the form of a car accident, which is a very traumatic situation that friends of mine and I were just traveling routine night. And I was like dozing off because I was in the passenger seat before I heard boom, like this massive explosion. And I'm just like, what just happened? My friend doesn't know. He's yelling, he's screaming. It's frantic. The car is jumping and shaking. Fishtail him. We fly off the highway, Dukes of Hazzard style, 75 miles per hour, nearing a bridge into this massive ditch. And it was like fast and slow motion at the same time, like glass was smacking me in the face. And I could literally feel trees hitting me in the face before we finally hit a massive tree. This tree literally caused us to accordion in the car, like the car accordion, and we were trapped inside. And so that's a whole story in itself, but I walked away from that. And I remember sitting in that moment before walking away thinking like, man, I'm about to die without having ever lived. Mm-hmm. And that was really a wake-up call for me, even helped me stop struggling with my anxiety, because I realized on the back end of that life is literally passing you by, and you get a choice. You have a choice to make in this life, whether you just actively allow it to pass you by or you take action to go for what you want, to make the time you have count. You got to make every moment matter, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. So it was a promise that I made after that experience. And I know we all believe differently, and that's cool, but I made a promise to God. I was like, I don't know what I'm here for. I have no idea. Well, you do. And since you kept me, I will spend the rest of my days pouring my whole heart and soul out for people. So I spent the next few years looking for opportunities to serve, uplift, and edify people. So it didn't go directly into church. It was just years of trajectory that led me to that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, everybody has their moment, right? Everybody has their moment. Mine was being homeless. I mean, I was a single mom. I was left without a baby or with a baby. I was going to get a divorce. And I'm like, this is my life at 19, 20, like, get it together. Like, that was where I was like, make the decision, change your world. And I think it's incredible. So you get into being a pastor, and you also, you help with inner city kids too. You're in LA. Is this correct?
I'm in Oklahoma City, so okay, LA.
Okay, LA. All right.
Yeah, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Okay. So let's talk about that. Your early years of being a pastor, because I think that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So I always dreamed of like working in a high-rise building downtown in a suit and tie. That was like my dream. I wanted to do it every day. And so I chased, and I attained that dream. And I worked for multiple corporations downtown Oklahoma City. And one of them is the newest skyscraper, like looking out over the entire city. And I sat there thinking, I've never felt so empty in my life. Mm. Because what happens when the dream is realized, and for the first time you see with real eyes that the dream is not all you realized? And that's the place I found myself in. And so that is when I started looking for other ways to fulfill my mission. And I was open to different things. And so I started going to this church that was like massive. I mean, it was like the Disney World of church. We walked in, 50-foot ceilings, all this stuff, all these happy people everywhere. And I'm not going to lie, my first thought was, man, this ain't real. These people are too happy to be, way too happy, way too friendly. So I just started attending. Now, the thought triggered the first day, man, it would be cool to work at a place like this. But instantly I said, that'll never happen. And long story short, it was not even a year later when I kept waiting on that happiness to wear out and those people to start changing, and they never did. And I realized this is a principle that the people in this church live. And so next thing you know, I found myself in an office being interviewed, and I wound up getting that job. And I remember asking them, like, why would you hire me? I'm not credentialed. Like, I went on to become ordained, but I was like, I don't have the credentials. I didn't go to school for this. I went to school for psychology. And like, why would you hire me? And they said, you got the only credentials that matter. And that's a heart for God and his people. And I'll never forget that. And so, yeah, young man, I go in and I'm learning, and I spend 5 years of my life there. And the first few years were immaculate. They were incredible. It's like you're living the dream. But I remember when it started to shift, and it was like 2.5, 3 years in, whereas as wonderful as the things we were doing, something still burned in my heart. Like I was on a parallel road. Like, this is almost, but not quite. Like, I'm headed in the same direction, but I don't know that this is what I was put on the planet to do. Because there's many people that come to this place, and I'm talking thousands. How many more people I don't care how big, how beautiful, how drastic, how magical experience we create, they're never coming. But do not all people need hope? Do not all people need love? Do not all people need care and compassion and someone to breathe life into them? And I start thinking these thoughts, and then I start feeling the conviction that it's supposed to be you. And I was like, no, it's not. That's too much. I can't do that. And I remember when it really hit me that I'm supposed to go and build something that doesn't even exist. And so it caused me to step outside of my comfort, leave that behind, my security, my stability, my good thing, and step into the unknown. And that led me to the nonprofit work that I do in the inner city.
That's awesome. So let's talk about that, because I think that's so important. And I love that. Giving back, philanthropy is so important to me. It's important to you. And that's what we do. And so let's talk about that project and what you're doing there, because I think a lot of people need to hear about that. That's really important.
Yeah. So part of the thing that I felt called to do was create my own mission. But that doesn't necessarily pay the bills when you're starting out. So you got to find a job. And I was like, I don't want to just get another corporate job. And I searched, and that job found me. And there's a group of guys, they're like Avengers. That's what I call them, superheroes that come, like these guys are from all over with all types of life experience who just care. And I was presented this opportunity to work with Youth for Christ, which is a Christian-based organization, but we have one of the very few urban branches that they have in the nation here in Oklahoma City. And so we work with the worst of the worst schools, rated worst in every statistical category you can think of, and the kids who have the least amount of hope. And we go in and we bring hope and we bring life. We bring food every week. We feed them. We provide literal like life skills. We connect them with community partners and expose them to things that they don't even realize exist, that they didn't otherwise deem possible. And so basically everybody sees problems. Everybody sees a problem with inner cities. Everybody sees crime problems, violence, and they can talk and complain until they turn purple. But who's going to be a part of the solution? And so that's what we do. We say, all right, while you're talking, sitting on the sidelines, judging people, we're going to go serve families. We're going to go serve kids. We're going to go serve schools and administration. We're going to show up and be whatever they need us to be. Sometimes they need me to help a resource officer break up a fight. Sometimes they need me to, all type of things. Like there's little girls who text me and like, they don't even have feminine products and they don't have parents and they're living alone. And so my wife and I figure out how, we just go and meet physical needs and be hope on the front lines.
I love that. And you mentioned your wife. So let's talk about that. So when did you meet your wife? How did that story come about?
Man, I met her. She was 18. I was 20. It was her first year of college. It was my second year of college, my second freshman year. That's a whole nother story because I've just played and partied my first year. I was a football player, that accident wound up taking away my football career, no more football. And I went to a small school, met her in Texas, which is where she's from. Some kind of way convinced her to move to Oklahoma with me. We went to Oklahoma Christian University where we graduated, which they just highlighted me for the things I've been doing around the world. So that was dope. But she's stuck here with me in Oklahoma ever since we graduated because the cost of living is just so low. The economy's so good. And it's really hard to keep a Texan out of Texas, just so you know.
I believe that. So is she working with you on all the projects with you, or does she have side gigs? Like, tell us a little bit more about her.
Man, she got her own thing. So here's the thing. When I was young, I'm going to be honest, I think as I was younger, especially coming from a religious background and then just what I saw in my own life, I was a lot more toxic, but not like crude or cruel or abusive. I was just more like, I didn't want her to do anything. And I tried to guide and steer and fix and mold her into what the woman she was supposed to be. Man, I remember when I had the revelation, bro, you're not her God. You didn't create her. The same God that gifted you and put dreams inside your heart and soul, put dreams inside hers. And that's when I began empowering her to do her own thing. So she very much has her own career. She works for a hospital, like higher up, and she like builds computer-based training and all this technical stuff. But her passion is music. She's always been a sing like a songbird. And that's part of how she won my heart. But she's a whole artist. You can find her on Apple Music. She got all type of streams. She's working on a project right now. She's incredible. So she does her own thing. I do my own thing. I empower her to go live her dream and her purpose. She empowers me to live my dream and my purpose. And we come back, we power out, support each other, and boom, we keep moving.
I love that. You're also an author. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about book or books.
So book 1 is done. Book 2, I just started on. So there's that.
Okay. So what is it about? What title? Let's go. Let's talk about it.
Asleep at the Wheel. Taking back control of your life.
I like that.
And that's from a story where I fell asleep at the wheel on the highway. Ooh. And that could have wound up way worse than it did. When I say fell asleep at the wheel, I don't mean was nodding off. I was out cold and woke up with my whole car driving down the side of the highway, not even on the little median, like off the highway, before I almost ran into a guardrail. And I just, my life flashed before my eyes. But the point of it is, you don't plan to fall asleep at the wheel. You don't get in a car for a road trip and think, I'm going to take a nap while I'm driving. Likewise, you don't think I'm going to get divorced the day you say I do. you also don't think I'm going to go poor the day you start a career. Like it's a slow fade and things happen. And someday you just wake up in left field, not knowing how you got there. And so this is a purpose plan for me to wake people up, because everybody needs a wake up call and point people back on the path to purpose.
You know what? This is interesting. Let's dive into that a little bit, because I recently have gotten divorced. It was really hard. And we were together almost 17 years, married 15. We've been friends forever. And so, you don't. The day you get married, you do not think, you know what, one day we're going to get divorced. And it's so interesting because as I've gone through the process, and we took a lot of time, and and I like to say graceful about it, and we were very private. There was a lot of times where I'm like, what was the breakdown? Where did the breakdowns happen? And one of the things that I always bring up is there was a lack of God in our life on both sides. For me, it was more in and out. I'm a Christian woman. I believe. I kept trying to go to different churches, and I was trying, and I really was trying to encourage, to get that more. And he believed in God, but it wasn't something he was, wanting to get really involved with, which I wasn't forcing. But what I thought was, if I just showed, I'm just going to go every Sunday, or and not like I was perfect. I wasn't, and I had a lot of things going on, but it just felt like that was a huge piece. And I've had this conversation privately. I really think if we would have had more God into our lives, that this breakdown would have been avoided, or at least handled differently. Because when you get married so young, this is the other thing. When people get married so young, you're going to grow, and you're either going to grow together or you're going to grow apart. And so we really experienced rapid shifts from when we got married to totally different people after. And it's really an interesting transition. So God would be first, but the other breakdown is the communication. Our communication just always was like this. It was just never right. We couldn't get it together. So, advice for people, you're talking about your book, but, just basic advice, like relationships, and being asleep at the wheel. What would be your top things to tell somebody? How can you make sure that you don't fall asleep at the wheel, that you have that awareness and that control?
That is an incredible question. And I think that's one that a lot of people struggle with. And I do premarital counseling for people to set people up, and you legitimately hit the nail on the head. And I tell them up front. Most people don't realize up front. Number one, I had a person tell me in the beginning, how do you spell marriage? And I started M-A. He said, nope, W-O-R-K. I was like, ooh. And not that we want to paint this picture that it's like this hard, laborsome thing, because that is a lot of times what people say. And there are some days where it's hard, but any relationship is hard because you're dealing with two human beings with whole trains of thought, whole life experiences. And that's a lot to bring to the table. So what I would tell people how to keep them healthy, communication, you have to figure that out. And I know that that's been a thing for us because I have coping mechanisms from the trauma that I experienced, and she has coping mechanisms, and our coping mechanisms don't mesh because I laugh. You could be cussing me out and I'll laugh. Well, if somebody's expressing their heart and their deepest desire, probably not the best choice to make to laugh when, you know what I'm saying? So, but the advice that I would give you is listen. Learn to control yourself and what you feel, because you can say anything to another human. It's all about how you say it. So if you can learn how to communicate effectively that way, and the next thing is learn to major in what really matters most. So for example, when we start having issues or things that could rub me the wrong way or could make me get upset, I start to ask myself, how much is this thing going to matter when I'm on my deathbed? How much is this going to matter at the end? And a lot of times your biggest arguments and issues you have with each other started as little things, little crevices that you just didn't pay attention to. You're like, it's not that big of a deal. You maybe argue a little bit, but those things grow, and then resentment grows. Yeah. And then you start to grow so far away from one another. You don't see a path back to the love you once had. And so you got to learn to fill in those gaps, literally from jump by addressing every little thing, which is tedious and tiresome, but it's the work that you have to put in order to prevent so many holes from going. Because people always say you can't pour from an empty cup. So they say that as an analogy of why you keep your cup filled. But if it's holes all around the cup, don't matter how much you're filling it, because it's leaking out. Mm-hmm. So you got to plug those little holes so that they don't become big ones and you become irreparable.
Right. The other big thing I think in a lot of marriages, and I know we totally shifted gears here, but I love talking to you about this, is money. Okay. Finances. All right. This was a big one for us too. I just want to talk about this because I think this is so important.
Number one cause of divorce.
100%. And I can tell you that most of our fights were about finances, no matter what, good or bad. And it's like, the things that you have to take from the lessons here, like if I go back and look at what I could have changed, like, all right, would I have had finances the way we did it? I would have had them separate. Not because I wouldn't have shared or he wouldn't have shared. I just think it would have been better for us as the way we worked to have separate finances where we would talk about it. Because what we would do is we would not talk about everything. And then it was all in the same spot. So let's talk about finances really quick. What would be your advice financially? I mean, for me, it was like, I think separating would have been better, like the separate finances, but that's not the answer for everybody because not everybody comes in like that. Sometimes there's only one provider. There's nothing wrong with that. But if there's only one provider, that can be touchy too, because then there's one person that's asking permission or somebody who has control. So how do we prevent some of that? Because that doesn't work either. You have to be fair to each other. And I think finances are crazy. Like you just said it, number one cause of divorce. I totally believe that. It is. It's crazy. So let's talk about finances and marriage or relationships in general.
Finances are so important because they have to do with your heart. And that's a biblical principle. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. So the problem is we don't value the same things. So I might value one thing, you value another thing. One person values security, so they don't want to spend any money. One person values just experience in life because you can't take money with you. And if that's not in alignment, you're saying you don't value my heart. You're not physically saying that, but that's what it feels like. And that's why this tension gets created as it pertains to finances. And so with us, it's exactly what you said, because we ran into a lot of issues in the beginning because we don't value the same things. And so without communication, I would spend this, she would spend that. Next thing you know, is like, well, why did you spend this on that? You didn't, and then you didn't communicate you were spending this. And then we wound up in a hole because both people were thinking that we had something we didn't, but both people were spending. So we went back to the drawing board and we have one account where we send a certain amount. That amount covers all the bills. And then we split the rest. I have an account and that money comes to me, and she has an account and that money goes to her, and you do with that as you please. All of the priorities are taken care of. And so you don't got to ask me. Whatever you do with that is what you do with it. And when it's gone, it's gone. I can't help you.
I think that's so smart, though. I think it's so smart. And you know what? I wish we would have had that advice right away, because so much of the beginning arguments of our marriage would have been prevented. I mean, we would argue about coffee. Like, did you get a coffee today? I'm like, well, yeah, I love my Starbucks. Hello. Like, I love Starbucks. I'm sorry. And he doesn't value that. So he wouldn't understand why we get a coffee when he's like, well, I'm stressed about this. So it makes so much sense. Looking back, you can look at it, looking back, like Steve Jobs says. But okay, incredible. So you do a lot of speaking. Okay, so let's ask it this way. What has been the most impactful event you've spoke at, or what you would say you were like, this really got me, this hit me, this one event where you spoke, and why?
Are you a Hamilton fan?
Yes.
So there's a point in Hamilton where things are getting a little bad in the war, and George Washington is introduced, and he says, can I be real a second? For just a millisecond? And that's a question I'm asking you. Like, I mean, we want to go there. You want to keep it real, and we can keep it real.
Absolutely.
All right. So it's something I haven't talked about a lot, but I've been starting to open up about more. So in my time and working in corporate church, don't get me wrong, I loved it. And then we help a lot of people, and it's a beautiful thing, but there's another side. There's a backside. Mm-hmm. And there's the business of church. And the thing is, it has to function that way. I mean, it just is what it is. But my heart, I'm such an empath, and sometimes unintentionally, people get lost in the sauce, especially when you deal with the business of big church. And so there came a point in my own heart where there was such a level of burnout and such a level of hurt from some of the things that I saw that it really severed my connection and that free flowing relationship I once had with God. So I've been running off fumes for like years in this place of like knowing that there's a God, but feeling disconnected and there's no flow. And anytime I step in any church since I got off staff at a church, I couldn't feel what I once felt. And that was heartbreaking. I share that to set up. I got invited to speak at an event in Colorado in June this year. Mm-hmm. An event was called Embrace Your Ambition. And it was a conference for small business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody who had a big dream in their heart, but don't exactly know the know-how, or you got people around you telling you that you can't, or telling you you're crazy for thinking you can go for something greater. So when I got invited to speak, I'm all in. It's a God business conference. Let's get it. I'm ready. I'm going to punch these people in the chest. I'm going to hit them in their heart, right in their gut, and I'm going to change their lives. And that's where I'm at in my head. So I get on the plane and I was like getting ready to get my hustle music on and get hyped so that I can be ready. When I get off the plane, I'm ready. And all my music was gone. And all my music was gone except for 2 songs. And the 2 songs were very highly spiritual songs. And I listened to the words of those songs. And those songs made me, I broke on that plane. When I say I broke, like I was crying like somebody died. Like the lady next to me was like, hey, sir, like she was shaking, like, are you dying? Like, are you okay? And I said, I'm okay. But I was processing the words and I took that as a sign that I'm supposed to switch. I had my speech prepared for 4 months. I'm about to switch my speech and I'm going to give them something else. So I switched it and I had a day to prepare it. And I did what I had to do. I showed up. I was obedient. And when I tell you, when it was time to deliver that speech, now this gets me. Because that was the first time in years where I felt the flow and the connection again. When I say I did what I was supposed to do, and I got to the end of that speech and I was pouring my whole heart and soul out, and I had this song, I played it, and I ended with that song as I'm talking, as the song singing, I'm talking, and I'm talking about it. The song, by the way, if anybody who cares to know, is Million Little Miracles. And I talked about the million little miracles are you. Your life is a miracle. I don't care what you went through. Everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent, it doesn't make sense that you're even still here breathing and standing, but you are. So, I can't say this without giving my whole heart and soul. So I finish and I get to that point and all I see is the whole room weeping. I mean, when I say weeping, I'm watching people transform right before me. Mm-hmm. And I can't look at anybody. My eyes are closed because if I look at them, I'm going to break. I can't hold it. And I finished that message and the transformation was stupid. And I went there to change those people's hearts, not knowing that it was mine that needed to be changed. And I went upstairs and I went to my room just to process everything that just happened. And I just fell to my knees and I was weeping because that was the first time where God revealed himself and became real again. And I know like this is my lane, because it wasn't, some people have church can get a bad rap for some people because there is politics involved. And there's a lot of people can't deal with, they feel like there's imperfect people, but then I didn't want to go full personal development route either. Cause then that's like the absence of God, who's a big part of me. So now this human being who started that conference created a lane where you can merge the two in an authentic way.
I like that.
Yeah, so that's the event. And she since asked me to be her partner. So we're taking that show on the road.
I love that. But this brings up a totally other topic too. So many people I talk to say, well, I don't believe in God, or I don't like church, and I don't like this because, and this happens in business. So I can tie it to business. We can get very bitter because of something or someone. And we got to remember this. Church is a building. It's that. It's not what we're talking about. That is not God. Is it great if you can go to a church? Human beings are imperfect people. There is always going to be somebody to disappoint you. There's money will go south, when there's money and power involved. And so I always hear from people, well, I'm so disappointed in the church, and I'm so disappointed in the business or my leader or this. Listen, Your leader, the people in the church are human beings. They're going to make mistakes. And here's the other lesson. You're going to make mistakes too. So as long as you sit and look at those mistakes and use that as your excuse to keep yourself small, you will always stay small. And when you say, absolutely not, that is one person or a group of people, that is not the purpose. The purpose is much greater. That's when you become greater. Because you realize that if you sit because it's an excuse, it's justifying your version of a story that's not real. And it's justifying you not playing at the level you need to play. And I've done it. You've done it. I've done it. I'm like, I use this as an excuse to not be my biggest self. I played small for many years. I've done it recently. I was hurt. I felt bitter. I was like, you know what? I'm not happy with work stuff or something that happened at work. And it's because this person said this. There's always going to be politics involved. Somebody's always going to disappoint you. It's up to you to be that person. Okay. And I love that you said that, because so many people turn away from God because they're scared, and they take anything they can to justify that fear, because what they're afraid of is that God really is going to help them, and they don't know how to handle it. Like, it's like that fear of success. They're afraid you're going to get it, and you're afraid you're going to fail. It's the same thing. Fear isn't real. It's not real. And so I think it's so incredible that you said that at an event. I had 2 events that changed my world too. And both were not planned the way I thought they were going to go. One event I went up I was prepared to say something totally different. The whole panel started going on a totally different tangent. It got out of control. And I was like, how do I salvage this? Biggest event I ever spoke at, and it was the most impactful event. Isn't that crazy? And it was not planned. I went from the heart, and you went from the heart. Those are the best ones, because when it just comes up like that and you just go with it, that's the message. That's God talking through you. That's God talking through you.
That's so good. And I love everything you said. And you hit on something, the principle of personal accountability, personal responsibility. Because as long as you want to point the finger at them, as long as you want to point the finger at the job, you want to point the finger at the pastor, at the church, you want to point the finger at the relationship for the reasons why you aren't living your best life and executing and maximizing the time and the potential you have, you will always live in a mediocre existence. You will never maximize your potential, because nobody has the power to take from you that which is yours but yourself, unless you allow it. So you got to start looking in the mirror. Every single one of us, this is something I challenge myself to do. They don't have the power to make me not walk in my greatness. They can say things and do things externally. I have no control over that. I got control over how I respond and how I show up, though. And that's on me. And so you got to take that personal accountability and responsibility for your own actions, and know that you can only control what you can control. But that's where you got to focus, not on what you can't control.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think right now, if we look at, let's just go out of this little world we're in right now and look at just in general, what's going on in social media and in politics and things like that. We're not going to get specific, but the victimhood that's happening all over. I deserve this because of this. This happened to me. This happened to me. And now I'm not saying there's not true victims. There are a lot of victims in the world, and there's nothing that happens. But when we use it constantly as our excuse, and we're constantly the victim, and we're blaming everyone else, it's this person's fault, and because of this person, I can't do this. Because of this person, I'm this. It's a disease. It's a disease right now, and it's happening on a massive level. But I also see this shift, and I think in the world of being spiritual and in the Christian world, you can see a shift happening where it was really big for a while, and now we're coming out of it, and people are waking up, and they're starting to be like, that's not working. Like this victim game that all of us are playing, it's not going to work. We have to actually take action. So what do you say to people who they're children of trauma? They have been victims. They've been victimized. And there's no doubt. And I always say, make your pain your purpose. That's what I say. But what would you say to somebody who has gone through some things? Maybe they had a horrible childhood. Maybe something terrible has happened. Maybe they're sick. What can you tell somebody to keep them going and empower them today?
Man, that's another incredible. I love this conversation. You are amazing, by the way. Let's give her a hand. You guys give her, seriously, thank you for just being you. The world is a better place because you're in it. And I felt like I needed to say that in this moment. But I would tell you, stop giving your power away, because you're stronger than you think you are. And when you place blame on everything else outside around you, you give your power away and you diminish the power that you have inside of you to overcome all of the adversities that you face. My entire life. Well, there's a thing called the ACEs test, ACES, Adverse Child Experiences, where it's a scale of 0 to 10. Anybody who has over a 4, they're like, oh, you screwed. I got an 8 on that, 8 out of 10. My wife got a 9 out of 10. So it doesn't make sense for us to live the life that we live and to be doing the things that we're doing, except we did not allow that to define us. It doesn't matter what you went through. It doesn't matter what they did to you. It doesn't matter what they said about you. You're not defined by any of it. And you can sit there and want life to be fair, but it's not. Bottom line. The sooner you accept that it is what it is, and that's a conversation I had with myself at age 20 when I looked in the mirror and was like, I'm not where I should be. I'm not where I want to be. I had this setback, all of these things outside my control. But I had to have the conversation with myself that, listen, it is what it is. You can't change that. So you can spend the rest of your years focusing on what you can't change, or you can do something about what you can. And that's a choice that you got to make. Do something with what you can about what you can so that you take back control of your own power so that you can maximize your potential.
Absolutely. And I think we start by taking away the labels. People keep labeling themselves, and they label in micro labels. I'm a single mom, who, a Caucasian, whatever you want to call me. And, like we keep going. It's like, no. I'm a woman. I'm a successful, how do you define yourself? And what I see people doing is they're defining themselves in all these little categories where you're almost putting yourself in a group of nothing. Like you're this, and this, so only 3 people can agree with you. That doesn't work. Like we need to open this up. If we want to be love and we want to surround and empower everybody together, hey, I'm a human being, you're a human being. Let's start there. Like, I'm a human being, you're a human being. You empower people, I empower people. Like, let's get together and be, it's great to be diverse, but remember, we're all human beings. We're flawed. Yes. But so something I worked on when I was younger is I do not call myself a single mother. I never did. I didn't like that label because it made me feel, not that I thought this about others, but to me, it made me feel lesser. I'm like, I think I'm putting myself down when I say it. So what I said is, I'm a mom. I'm a mom. I'm a power mom. I'm a super mom. I'm a mom that's working hard. Like I always put the positive on the label because I'm like, I don't want to be defined by a negative connotation. And I think people do that without realizing that's what they're doing. And they say it every day. And when you say something long enough, you believe that. So we need to change the way we think. We need to change the way we speak to ourselves. And then we will change the way we speak and think to the world. And that's how the world changes. And it's wonderful. We're all unique and different. Yes. But we're all very much the same too. We have so much of the same. So I think that's an important message as well. What do you have to say about that as we wrap up a little bit? Because we're going to go into what's coming next for you too.
My goodness, you are so powerful. I'm loving every minute. I have a lot of conversations, but this is definitely one of my favorite. And listen, guys, I always tell people belief is the bedrock. You don't know what that means. Belief is your foundation, and you become what you believe. So whether you believe you're going to do something great, you believe something powerful about yourself, or you believe something terrible about yourself, either way, you're right. So every day I tell people, I teach the people I work with, my clients, about the power of affirmations. And I'm like, I know you feel foolish. Looking at yourself in the mirror, telling yourself you're amazing, telling yourself you are a super mom, telling you feel foolish. But listen, what you don't realize is that you're planting seeds into your subconscious that will eventually take root and start to transform how you move and operate. So whether you believe it or not, the belief comes later. Just start saying it. So when you start telling yourself you're a super mom, I'm sure every day you didn't feel like a super mom. But over time, you realize that I am, and I get to determine that by what I believe about myself, and you start living into the actions that match the belief you had in your heart. So that's what I say, guys. Listen, the power lies within your own mind for you to choose who you are, what you do, the life you want. It's in your hands. You choose, you decide.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I freaking love it. I love this conversation. It's awesome. All right, what's next? Okay, so you've done so many things, and I know that you're not done. Obviously, you've got some projects going. Let's talk about them as we wrap up.
Yeah, so one of the things, I'll get to my heart. One of the things I'm doing with Mr. Les Brown, that's one of my mentors. So he and I are working on some projects. We'll be in New York City. So that's coming up. And I'll be speaking with him, traveling sometimes. We've done a lot of virtual stuff. So if you know who that is, if you don't, you should know who that is. But
he's one of my favorite speakers of all time.
So he definitely has been pouring into me. He saw a gift in me and said, oh, you got something special, young man, and I'm going to bring it out. And so I'm also working on some programs with my other mentor, whose name is Trent Shelton. So be on the lookout for that. He and I doing some powerful things. That's my brother and my friend, man. We are really close, and we were divinely appointed to work together. Book number 2, I just started on, so that'll probably be out in the fall. So that one is like pretty much like a sequel. The first one is more internal, inner work, soul work, looking inside, introspective, overcoming the adversity. But now I'm about to punch you in your chest. So this one is called Awaken, and you got no excuses, and I'm about to push you to step into all you were created for. So from asleep at the wheel to awaken, you got no more excuses. It's time to go. And then the last thing is it's really my passion project right now. And that is what we're building. It's a movement. I mean, it's a conference. It's also a podcast. So that's a new podcast that I'm co-hosting with my business partner, Ashley Faye. Shout out to you. That's my G. And it's about really stepping into the spiritual, because here's the bottom line. Everybody has divine gifts, but you feel like your gifts aren't enough because you compare your gifts to him and her and them and they. What we're saying is none of that matters. All God cares about all throughout the Bible is, will you put your gift on the table? Because if you put it on the table, I'll multiply it. That's what happens when there's a multitude of people. There's thousands of people, and God talks to his disciples like, all right, we got to feed these people. They're like, that's not possible. Stop telling me what's not possible. I'm talking to you. Stop telling me what's not possible. He said, what do you have? We don't have anything. I didn't ask you, what don't you have? He said, what do you have? And none of them, we don't got a kid. So I got some lunch. Okay, thank you. That's what I asked. The kid puts a couple of fish and some bread on the table, and he multiplied it. What I'm saying is, the God in heaven wants to multiply your gifts so that you can reach people and fulfill your mission, but you don't believe. And so the Embrace Your Ambition is all about that thing that's in your heart. Not only is it possible, it's probable if you put it on the table. So that's what we're building, and we're taking it global. We're starting this next year. We'll have 4 in different cities around the country, and then we're going international. We're already talking with the people international, so we're going to be everywhere. Watch out for us, world.
I love that. And you brought up something that we'll close with is, you know, what don't I have versus what do I have? Every day I say thank you to God for the things I have and what he's given me and provided me. What I see in business, what I see in the world is this lack of gratitude. It's always when people come to me with business, they're like, we don't have this, or this happened and this happened. And I'm like, but have you looked at the positives that are happening? Like, why are you here? And I see, you know, a lot of people fail in business because they have zero gratitude, and they haven't had it the entire time. And one of my business partners told me, he's like, forget about what you did for somebody because they already did, which is really sad. But I used to get very hurt by the lack of gratitude. And what I've realized is I can only control what I feel. And so what I do, instead of worrying about what other people are not thankful for, I focus on what I am thankful for. And so I am thankful that you came on this show today, because this was incredible. And I love your movement. I love Trent Shelton too. I want to get him on the show as well, because I've been following him for a couple months, and I just absolutely love him. Obviously, Les Brown is one of my favorite speakers. You have impacted me over the last 6 months. And honestly, I'm going to share a secret. You got me through some of that divorce, because when I was sitting on Clubhouse for those couple months I was in there, I was like, you know what? I needed to hear you, and I needed to hear Trent, and I need to hear a lot of those power speakers, because it just got me through some really tough times. So y'all, if you do not know this man, you need to be following him. Throw out some handles for everybody. How can people find you real quick? We're going to put your links in on the bio too, but let's talk about how can we find you?
Absolutely. You can find me everywhere you want to be at M Black Speaks with an S. M Black Speaks with an S. Also, mblackspeaks.com. You can check me out. The places I hang out the most would be Instagram and Clubhouse. So you check me out there. And then also on Instagram at EY Ambition. Check us out. That's where you can find me.